What is the smell of a Japanese gangster? And today I'd like to talk about a citrus fragrance that feels complex and full of tension, that is Yuzuyakuza by Spiritica. If we only look at the name, Yuzuyakuza can easily be mistaken for a perfume that relies on gangster symbolism. Tokyo at night, kabukicho, tattoos, banknotes, gunpowder, wet asphalt. It sounds like an entire dangerous fantasy already staged for us. But when I actually sprayed it on my skin, the first thing that caught me was not danger, but an extremely bright yuzu. And only this yuzu is strange. It is not daytime yuzu, not clean citrus foam in a bathroom, not the transparent fruitiness of ice water in summer. It is more like neon light. At night, the background is very dark, wet, and cold, and the light floats above it. The brightness of yuzu and grapefruit remains present, but underneath it, there is always an inorganic urban feeling, like asphalt after rain, damp paper, or ink just beginning to sink into the skin before it has fully dried. Yuzuyakuza was released by the Italian brand Spiritica in 2025. The note list includes yuzu, sudachi, pineapple, grapefruit, and gunpowder. The heart includes cherry blossom, ink, petrichor after rain, and sun-heated asphalt. The base contains mahogany, the smell of banknotes, cedar, incense. This note list is highly theatrical, but that is also where its greatest risk lies, because it could very easily become a pile up of cultural symbols, as if putting yuzu, cherry blossom, ink, tattoo, gangster, and Tokyo nights all together would automatically produce the sense of so-called Japaneseness and automatically generate a drama, a story. But a scent does not work that way. It can only translate. It translates history, identity, city, and social imagination into relationships between materials. Yuzu becomes an entry point into a certain idea of Japan. Ink becomes writing and tattooing. Asphalt and rain become an urban nighttime experience. So what I like to discuss is not whether this perfume really smells like Yakuza, but how it uses scent to handle the contradiction inside the identity of Yakuza. And Yakuza is a common Japanese term for organized crime groups. The most widely accepted explanation for the origin of the word comes from traditional Japanese card gambling, where the numbers 8, 9, and 3 form a losing hand. It is a worthless combination. But over time, it became a highly symbolic identity because this hand had no value, and people began using Yakuza to describe gamblers, outcasts. Gradually, the word becomes synonymous with Japan's underworld. And this is already fascinating. The worst hand eventually becomes stories that represents fate, rules, danger, honor, and order. And this perfume also begins with a contradiction. Its opening is very bright. Yuzu appear quickly, not as sweet fruit, but as the kind of brightness that comes when citrus peel is crushed, bitter, oily, even slightly metallic. Grapefruit makes it more awake, while pineapple does not behave like tropical sweetness here. It gives the citrus a rounder sense of flesh. But soon, the presence of gunpowder pulls this yuzu out of simple freshness. It does not necessarily smell literally like smoke from a gun. It is more like a sharpness in the nose, a dry, powdery, dangerous edge. It prevents the yuzu from becoming a clean citrus, and it also prevents it from becoming the familiar summer fragrance everyone already knows. I think the yuzu here in this bottle is very much like neon at night. Neon itself is bright, but its brightness is not sunlight. It needs darkness. It needs wet streets. glass, asphalt, and puddles, surfaces that can't reflect that light. The yuzu in Yuzuyakuza works the same way. Its brightness does not exist independently. It needs the wet, cold, inorganic, industrial texture beneath it in order to appear. As the fragrance moves into the heart, this urban feeling becomes more and more pronounced. Petrichor, asphalt, and ink gave the scent a hard surface. It is rain in the city. Rain falls onto concrete, asphalt, signs, paper, leather, and people's clothing. Everything becomes wet, but not soft. It becomes shinier, colder, and closer to the skin, not in a very comfortable way. By the time the scent is nearing its end, the tartness and brightness of the yuzu have finally faded away. It no longer feels like neon. It no longer even feels like light. What remains on the skin is something industrial, cold, again, almost inorganic, with no living body worms. Asphalt, paper, ink, like the hard, cold surface left behind after the city has absorbed everything alive and vivid. At this moment, I suddenly feel a little sad because that bright yuzu from the beginning had once existed so clearly, like a brief life or a moment that only appears at night, but in the end, it still disappears. What remains is neither fruit nor the theatrical drama of gunpowder, but a kind of silent urban residual, as if every narrative about identity, desire, honor, and danger will eventually move away from a living person and become a kind of institutional coldness. So the Tokyo in this perfume is not the Tokyo of tourist postcards. It is not clean streets, convenience store lights, or skyscrapers. It is closer to Tokyo at night, especially Kabukicho, as an urban space organized by consumption, desire, performance, order, and danger all at once. Daytime streets speak the language of efficiency. Nighttime streets speaks the language of desire. The daytime city speaks of order. The nighttime city hides order and transforms it into neon, door sign, cash, smoke, wet pavement, and the silence between pedestrians. And Yuzuyakuza does not make this space noisy. It does not make me smell a crowded nightlife scene. Instead, it feels more like the aftermath of nightlife. The street is still wet, and a trace of smoke and banknotes remain in the air. This is also why I really like its inorganic quality. Asphalt, paper, ink, and metallic notes remain present. They make yuzu no longer just a fruit, but a light transformed by the city, by this concrete jungle. They also make the identity of Yakuza less like a dramatic gangster fantasy and more like a deeply contradictory presence within both traditional and contemporary Japanese society. On one hand, it is associated with ritual, loyalty, bodily markings, and internal order. On the other hand, it is associated with social stigma, hidden identity, the gray economy of modern cities, and a consumable image of danger. This identity is both ancient and modern, both visible and concealed, symbolically powerful, but in real society constantly retreating into the shadow. Many high-concept perfumes have the problem of looking fascinating on the note list, but smelling like several concepts pasted together. Yuzuyakuza is not like that on my skin. It does not collapse into citrus cleaning product, and it does not become a simple, smoky, dark fragrance. It always retains the brightness of yuzu. the coldness of asphalt after rain, the dryness of paper and banknotes, and the inorganic quality of ink, a little incense and suede underneath to hold everything together. For me, its greatest success is that it does not turn contradiction into conflict. It turns contradiction into an order close to the skin. The fragrance is clear but not loud. It carries a dangerous narrative but smells extremely restrained. This is very important because if it were too loud, it would become roleplay, as if wearing it meant immediately entering some cinematic gangster world, but it does not do that. Its projection and temperament are both very understated. It is not the kind of perfume that wants to fill an entire room. And precisely because it is understated, I find it closer to the reality of identity. Identity is not always outwardly displayed. Many identities are hidden, inside clothing, beneath the skin, in places others cannot see, but the self can always feel. Perfume can be like this too. It is not always meant to be smelled by others, as sometimes it builds a layer of order around the body that only the wearer truly knows, exactly like the identity of a Yakuza. It presses the brightness of Yuzu into the wet coldness of the city and translates the contradiction of Yakuza identity into a clear, restrained, non-performative scent structure. So if I had to describe it in one sentence, I would say this is not a perfume about gangster, but a perfume about how identity glows in the dark. And that's my review on Yuzuyakuza. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.